on a bit of a journey. And the first place we're going to start is with a genre called knowledge management. But from knowledge management, we'll then go on a journey to social computing and talk about what social computing is, what it means. And then finally, from social computing, we're going to move on and talk about social analytics, which I think is where some of the coolest stuff is happening. And I think it's a real untapped benefit of social computing. People don't often spend a lot of time on what they can do with social analytics. In the old days, there were big companies. And effectively, it was big companies that had big knowledge management problems. And because of that, this is where innovation happened. So if there was ever to be innovation in knowledge management, it typically occurred inside of departments, inside of big organizations. So over the last 3 or 4 years, there's been a huge shift. And that shift is really social computing. So that shift is, instead of the innovation happening inside of big companies, as far as knowledge management is concerned, the innovation is now happening out on the internet. And it's happening by people here in the room. We are the ones that are innovating in knowledge management space. So when you look at it, the reason why the innovation is coming from outside of companies now is because that now is where the massive people are that have the problem, they have the knowledge management problem. And if we look at the network, well, now we have the internet, the world's biggest and most complex network ever devised. So putting these together, that means innovation in knowledge management is happening outside of companies, it's happening on the internet today, and we're the ones driving that forward. And I think if I sort of stop and give some sort of evidence as to this assertion that I've made, I think what I'd say is that it wasn't until Facebook came along that I actually managed to share my photos with my mother. And when you drill into it, what's a photo? A photo is really just a piece of knowledge. And so even though it's done in a personal sense, it's still a form of knowledge management. Sharing those photos with my mother is actually a form of knowledge management. So that's my evidence. So social computing provides a way to manage information overload. And so the example here is that it's a bit like a book club. Social computing in essence becomes like a bit of a book club. Book clubs were a way that we solved information overload. Because what you would do is you'd get together with your friends and you'd talk about the books that you're reading. And because you knew your friends, you knew what they liked, you could better determine which books you might like as well. And so it would reduce the total number of books that you needed to read the best ones, the ones that you'd probably like the best. So book clubs are a good analogy. They solve the problem socially. Our social connections helped us find the right books to read. And that's exactly the same on the internet. Working with other people, that social interaction helps us work out which information on this massive internet that we live on, which information there is the best information for us to read. And if lots of people read a particular piece of content, that's telling you something about that content. It doesn't necessarily say that it's a fantastic piece of content, but it does say that a lot of people felt that this would be relevant to what they're doing. And when you combine that with all the other sort of social techniques that are around the outside of that, whether it's commenting on it, sharing it, retweeting it, liking it, favoriting it, editing it, rating it, liking or tagging it, all of those things together really start to make that content a lot better. So what is social analytics? Basically, it's grabbing all of that wisdom that we produce, filtering it down, or all of the knowledge we produce, filtering it down and finding the wisdom. That's really what social analytics is all about. And you probably heard this term, the wisdom of crowds. Well, effectively, that's what it's all about. You've got the crowds. You've got this incredible crowd, which is the people working in your organisation. They're incredibly knowledgeable about the business that you're in. There's some fantastic wisdom out there. How do you catch to that more effectively to steer your business more effectively? That's where social analytics comes in. I've got some really good examples here in a second which will show you just the sorts of creative things that you might be able to do with this information. So the next part of the topic is I've got 2 demos which show you how you can bring some social computing innovation onto SharePoint directly. So I've built some tools to show you that. And then we'll talk about some of the competitors that are out there for SharePoint and why they've been successful. So we'll look at YouTube and Facebook and all those sorts of things.